The evening was quiet, and the little house stood in silence, hidden at the end of the narrow street. Inside, Emma sat on the floor with her little brother, holding him close as he clung to her shirt. Their mother was standing near the old wooden table, her face pale and her hands shaking. She was speaking softly, but her words were drowned out by the loud, angry voice of the landlord who had forced his way inside. His footsteps were heavy, and his tone was sharp, filling the small living room with fear. Emma could not understand every word the landlord said, but she could feel the weight of his anger. He kept pointing at her mother and raising his voice about money, about rent, about things Emma only half understood. The sound made her heart beat faster, and her brother buried his face against her, trying not to cry. But Emma could not hold her tears back. She sobbed and whispered through her trembling lips, "Don't hurt us, please. Don't hurt us." Her words were small, but they carried through the room. The landlord turned his head toward her, his eyes narrowing. Her mother quickly stepped forward, blocking the children with her body, and begged him not to frighten them. The landlord's face tightened, and he muttered angrily about overdue payments and how he would throw them all out if she did not pay soon. The sound of his threats made the children curl into each other, trembling with fear. The room seemed darker than usual. The flickering light bulb above the ceiling only added to the heavy feeling. Every shadow felt larger, and every word from the landlord seemed sharper. Emma's mother stood still, trying her best to speak calmly, promising that she would find a way to pay. She asked him to give them more time, but her voice was weak and shaking. The landlord did not want to listen. He slammed his hand on the table, making Emma jump, and shouted that he was tired of waiting. Emma could no longer stop herself. She buried her face against her brother's shoulder and sobbed louder. The sound of her crying filled the room, soft but painful. The landlord turned his head again, frowning at the sight of her little body trembling. She was just a child, yet her fear was so strong that it made the air heavy. He muttered under his breath, looking annoyed, but he did not stop. He kept raising his voice at their mother, telling her that if she did not pay, he would send people to throw their things out on the street. The mother's eyes filled with tears, but she refused to break down. She kept trying to stand tall, to protect her children with her presence. Inside, though, her heart was breaking. She wished she could give them safety, wished she had the strength to stop the man from scaring them. She wished her husband was here. But he was far away, always busy, always absent. She did not know when he would come back, and tonight she felt more alone than ever. Emma's brother whispered softly, asking if the man would really hurt them. Emma shook her head quickly, trying to comfort him, but her tears betrayed her. She held him tighter, rocking him gently, though her own body shook with fear. She looked toward the door as if hoping someone would walk through it, someone who could make all of this stop. Outside, the street was quiet, but the distant sound of a car echoed faintly. Emma did not notice it at first. She was too focused on her fear, too lost in the loud words filling the room. But something about the deep rumble of the engine was different. It grew closer and closer until the headlights of a large, dark car lit up the window. The sound was strong, unlike the usual small cars that passed by. Inside, the landlord did not notice it at first either. He was too busy waving his hand and warning Emma's mother about the coming days. But Emma's mother turned her head, noticing the lights outside. Her heart skipped for a moment, though she did not dare to hope. Emma wiped her tears with the back of her hand and peeked toward the door. The car door opened, and footsteps echoed across the path. They were firm, steady, and full of authority. For the first time that night, Emma felt her heart pause. She did not know why, but something inside her whispered that help was near. The landlord's voice grew quieter for a moment as he heard the footsteps. He looked toward the door, annoyed, as if another neighbor might be coming to interfere. He did not expect what was about to happen. The door handle turned, and the old wooden door swung open. A tall man in a perfectly tailored suit stepped inside. His presence filled the small house instantly. His eyes, sharp and commanding, moved quickly across the room, taking in the scene. He saw his little daughter clutching her brother, her face red from crying. He saw his wife standing weakly in front of them, trying to hold back her tears. And then he saw the landlord, standing too close, his face still twisted in anger. The silence that followed was heavy. For a moment, no one moved. Emma blinked through her tears, her eyes widening in surprise. Her lips trembled as she whispered softly, "Papa." Her father's jaw tightened. The sight of his children's fear cut through him like a blade. He had been gone for too long, too busy with work, too far from home. But now, in this moment, he was here and he could not forgive himself for letting them face this alone. His hands clenched into fists at his side as his chest rose and fell with controlled anger. The landlord cleared his throat nervously, suddenly unsure. He had not expected anyone else to arrive, much less a man like this. The stranger's presence was powerful, his polished shoes and sharp suit hinting at wealth and authority. There was something in his eyes that made the landlord step back slightly, though he tried not to show his unease. Emma's mother covered her mouth with her hand, her heart racing. She had not expected him tonight. She thought he was still far away, buried in business meetings. But here he was, standing tall in their doorway at the very moment she needed him most. Emma's sobs quieted, replaced with a small spark of hope. Her brother lifted his head too, blinking at the sight of their father. The room was still heavy with tension, but for the children, the air felt different now. Safer. The father took one slow step forward, his eyes locked on the landlord. His voice had not yet risen, but there was a storm building behind his silence. The landlord swallowed hard, suddenly aware that this night would not go as he had planned. And as Emma held tightly onto her brother, she felt a small smile fight through her tears. She had begged for someone not to hurt them, and now, standing in the doorway, was the one man in the world who would never allow it. Her father was home. The moment felt frozen in the air. The little house was still, but inside, every heart was racing. Emma's father stood tall in the doorway, his sharp eyes fixed on the landlord who had been shouting only moments before. The silence was so deep that even the ticking of the old wall clock seemed louder. Emma's sobs had quieted, her brother clung to her, and their mother held her breath, watching what would happen next. Richard, the father, slowly stepped into the room. His polished shoes pressed against the old wooden floor, and the sound of each step seemed to shake the walls. The landlord, who only minutes ago had been bold and loud, suddenly shifted uncomfortably. He tried to straighten his back and act firm, but his eyes betrayed his unease. The presence of this man was different. He was not just another neighbor. His suit, his confident walk, and the cold fire in his gaze made it clear he was someone of importance. Richard's voice finally broke the silence. It was deep, controlled, but full of power. "What is happening here?" he asked. His tone was not a question, it was a demand. The landlord opened his mouth to speak, but his words came out shaky. He tried to explain about late rent, about rules and payments, but his voice was weaker now. Emma's mother quickly stepped forward, her lips trembling. He came here to collect rent," she said softly, her voice low. "I asked him for more time, but he started shouting, and the children got frightened." Richard's eyes hardened. He turned toward his daughter, still holding her brother tightly. Emma's face was pale, her eyes red from tears. That sight pierced him more deeply than any words. His jaw clenched, and suddenly his voice thundered across the room. "Enough!" The shout echoed off the walls. The children jumped, but this time it was not out of fear. The power in their father's voice was not aimed at them, it was aimed at the man who had made them cry. The landlord stumbled backward a step, his bravado crumbling instantly. He had never been shouted at like this in this house, and never by someone who looked as commanding as Richard. "Do you think you can storm into my home, threaten my wife, and make my children cry?" Richard's voice grew louder, sharper, each word cutting through the silence like a blade. His eyes never left the landlord's face. The landlord stuttered, his earlier anger vanishing. I I didn't mean to frighten them. I only came to talk about the rent. They haven't paid, and Richard raised his hand, silencing him instantly. "You dared to raise your voice in front of my children? You dared to make my daughter beg for safety in her own home." His voice cracked with anger, and he took another step forward. The landlord could not meet his eyes anymore. Emma's mother placed a hand over her chest. She had never seen her husband like this. Usually calm and busy with his work, tonight he was different. He was fierce, protective, and unshakable. It was as though another side of him had awakened, a side that would never allow harm to touch his family. Emma whispered softly, "Papa," her small voice reached him, pulling at his heart. Richard glanced at her, his expression softening for a moment. He walked toward her, knelt down, and gently placed a hand on her trembling shoulder. "No one will hurt you, Emma," he said firmly. "Not while I'm here." Those words sank deep into her heart. She nodded slowly, clinging to her brother, while her tears turned into quiet sniffles. Her father's presence was enough to calm the storm of fear inside her. Richard stood again, turning back toward the landlord. His voice grew colder now. "You will not step foot into this house again without my permission. Do you understand?" The landlord swallowed hard. He looked around the room, his confidence completely gone. I I only came for what is owed," he muttered weakly. Richard's eyes narrowed. He reached into his jacket, pulled out a sleek wallet, and took out a stack of bills. He threw it onto the table with force, the sound making the landlord flinch. "Here. Take it. That covers more than what you think you are owed. But remember this: if you ever raise your voice to my family again, you will regret it." The landlord stared at the money, then at Richard. For the first time, he noticed the gold watch on Richard's wrist, the fine cut of his suit, and the way he carried himself like a man used to power. Suddenly, it all made sense. This was not an ordinary tenant. This was someone much greater, someone who could crush him with a single call if he wished. Richard took a step closer, his eyes burning with anger. "Get out," he commanded. The landlord did not argue. He grabbed the money quickly and stumbled toward the door. As he opened it, the neighbors who had gathered outside to watch gasped. They had seen the luxury car parked outside and now saw the landlord leaving in shame, his head bowed. The whispers began immediately. "Did you see him? That man, he's not just anyone." Inside, Richard closed the door with a firm hand and turned back to his family. Emma's mother's eyes were wet with tears, but this time they were not from fear, they were from relief. She whispered softly, "You came just in time." Richard sighed, running a hand over his face. "I should have been here sooner. I should never have left you to face this alone." He looked at his wife, then at his children. His voice grew steady again. "It will never happen again. I promise you." He walked back to Emma and lifted her into his arms. She buried her face against his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart. Her brother clung to his leg, and Richard reached down to pat his head. For the first time that night, the children felt safe. The room, once filled with shouting and fear, now felt different. It felt secure. The presence of their father had changed everything. Outside, the car lights still glowed against the walls, a reminder that their lives were not as simple as they had thought. Behind the modest home, there was a man with power, wealth, and a heart that belonged to his family. Richard held his daughter tightly and whispered again, this time softer, only for her to hear, "No one will ever make you cry like that again. Not while I live." The night settled again, but it was not the same silence as before. This silence was calm, protective, and filled with the strength of a father's love. And as Emma drifted into quietness in his arms, she knew her world had changed forever. The night outside was still, but inside the little house the air was thick with the echo of Richard's commanding voice. Emma sat quietly in her father's arms, her brother pressed against his leg, and their mother stood near the table, wiping tears from her face. The landlord had already left, carrying his shame and the money Richard had thrown at him, but the moment still clung to the family like a heavy shadow. The neighbors' whispers floated faintly through the thin walls, but none of them dared to step inside. Richard moved slowly to the old chair in the corner and sat down, holding Emma close. He looked at her small face, red and swollen from crying. Her big eyes stared up at him as if searching for proof that he truly was there, that he wasn't just a dream. He stroked her hair gently, his heart aching at the thought of what she had just endured. He had spent so much of his life running between business meetings, private flights, and contracts worth millions, but in this tiny moment, all of that seemed worthless compared to the tears of his daughter. His wife stood quietly, her hands folded, watching him with mixed emotions. Relief that he had arrived when they needed him most, but also hurt that he had left them to live in such fear and modest struggle while he moved in circles of power and wealth. She wanted to speak but did not know where to begin. Her heart was too full, her thoughts too tangled. Richard finally broke the silence, his voice steady but soft. "I saw her begging. I heard her cry, and I will never forget that sound." His eyes darkened with anger, not at his family but at himself. "I should have been here. I should never have allowed anyone to think they could harm you." Emma's mother stepped forward carefully. "You were working. You always said it was for us." "But, Richard, they don't know. The children don't know who you truly are. Even the neighbors, they think we live like this because you're just another man trying to make ends meet." Her words were quiet, almost hesitant. Richard lifted his head, his eyes sharp. "And that is my mistake. I thought hiding the truth would protect you. I thought living simply would keep you safe from greedy eyes, from those who would use us if they knew the truth. But now I see it only left you unprotected in another way." Emma blinked, confused. She looked at her father and asked softly, "Papa, why did that man listen to you? Why was he so scared?" Richard's chest rose slowly as he took in her innocent question. He looked into her eyes, deciding it was time. "Because I am not just your papa, Emma. I am a man who has built businesses, who owns companies, who commands respect. I am not just the father in this small house, I am a millionaire." The word hung in the air like thunder. His wife closed her eyes, tears spilling as if a long-kept secret had finally been spoken. Emma tilted her head, not fully understanding the depth of the word, but sensing its power. Her brother's eyes widened, his little hands gripping his father's leg tighter. Richard continued, his voice calm but filled with weight. "I never told you because I wanted you to grow with humility. I wanted you to know kindness before wealth, love before riches. I thought living here, in this modest home, would give you a better heart. But I forgot something important. I forgot that even humble hearts need protection." Outside, the neighbors' whispers grew louder. Word was spreading quickly through the street. "Did you see the car? Did you see the suit? He's no ordinary man. He must be rich." Windows opened slightly, shadows moved across curtains, and curious eyes tried to catch a glimpse of the truth. Some neighbors whispered in disbelief, others in envy, but all of them felt the same shock. The quiet family in the small house was not what they had thought. Richard stood again, placing Emma gently on the chair. He walked to the window, pulling the curtain aside for a moment. The luxury car gleamed under the dim streetlight, its polished body shining like a mirror. The sight alone was enough to silence the nearest onlookers. Richard let the curtain fall and turned back to his family. From this day, he said firmly, no one will dare look down on you. No one will dare make you cry. The world will know whose children you are. His voice carried not only authority but also a deep promise. His wife finally found her voice. Richard, if you had told me, I would have understood. I would not have questioned your late nights and your constant travel. But now, seeing Emma cry like that, I ask myself, was it worth hiding all this time? Richard's shoulders sank slightly, and for the first time that night, his strong frame seemed weighed down. He walked to her, placing a hand gently on hers. I thought I was protecting you from the dangers of wealth. I didn't realize I was leaving you vulnerable to the dangers of poverty. I will not make that mistake again. Emma's little brother tugged on his sleeve, his eyes wide. Papa, are we really rich? Like in the movies? Richard smiled faintly, bending down to his son's level. Yes, my boy. But what makes us rich is not just the money. It's love. It's family. That's what matters most. The rest, he gestured toward the window, where the car still shone in the dark, the rest is only to protect you. The children leaned into him, their small bodies finding comfort in his words. For them, riches were still a mystery, but the warmth of their father's arms was everything they needed to feel safe. Outside, a group of neighbors still gathered, whispering, trying to piece together the truth. Some said he must be a businessman, others said he was perhaps a secret owner of the very buildings they lived in. The landlord, who had left in shame, now sat in his own house, his hands shaking as he thought about the man he had tried to intimidate. He realized how close he had come to ruin, for a man of wealth and power could crush him without lifting a finger. Inside, Richard looked at his family again and declared in a voice that carried through the walls, tomorrow, everything changes. We will not stay here. We will move to a place where you will feel safe, where no one will dare to harm you. This house has memories of pain, and I will not let those memories stay with you. His wife nodded slowly, still overwhelmed but also relieved. The truth, though heavy, brought with it a strange peace. At last, she understood the life he had been hiding, and though she felt hurt by the secrecy, she also felt proud. Proud that the man standing before her was not only a father but a protector, a provider, a man who carried both wealth and love. Emma leaned against her mother, whispering, "Papa shouted so loud the bad man ran away." Her voice carried a small giggle, the first sign of lightness after the heavy night. Her mother hugged her close, whispering back, "Yes, my love. Your papa will always protect you." The night deepened, but inside the house, the fear that had filled the walls was slowly being replaced with something else: strength, security, and hope. The children drifted into sleep, their small breath soft against their father's chest. And Richard, looking down at them, knew that his life had taken a turn. No longer would he hide who he was. No longer would he let his family face hardship alone. Tomorrow, the world would see them differently. But tonight, in this small, fragile home, what mattered most was clear: his children were safe, and their tears had turned into trust. That trust was more valuable than every coin in his empire. The house was quiet after the storm of emotions that had shaken it only an hour earlier. Emma and her brother finally rested in their small room, drifting into sleep with the comfort of their father's presence close by. Their soft breathing filled the air, giving the night a calmness that had been missing. But Richard and his wife sat in the living room, their thoughts restless even in the silence. The old lamp on the table flickered, casting gentle light across the walls that had just witnessed fear, anger, and revelation. Richard sat tall in the chair, his eyes fixed on the floor, his mind heavy with everything that had happened. His wife sat across from him, her hands folded tightly in her lap. She looked at him with mixed emotions: relief that he was there, admiration for his strength, but also questions that had been buried for too long. Finally, she spoke in a low, trembling voice. "Richard, tonight, you showed a side of yourself the children never knew. Even I didn't fully know. You shouted like a storm, and you scared that man away. But I have to ask, how long were you planning to keep the secret from us? How long would we have lived in fear, thinking we were alone, while you had the power to stop it all? Richard raised his eyes slowly. He saw the pain behind her question, and it stung him more than any insult ever had in the business world. I thought I was protecting you, he said softly, his voice steady but full of regret. I wanted the children to grow up without pride or arrogance. I wanted them to know what it means to be humble, to be kind, to live simply. I never wanted them to think that money was the answer to everything. So I kept the truth hidden, even from you. His wife shook her head, tears gathering in her eyes. Humility is good, Richard. But not at the cost of fear. Tonight, our daughter begged a stranger not to hurt us. Do you know how much that broke me inside? She is just a child. She should never have felt that kind of fear. She should never have had to cry for safety. Richard's face hardened as he remembered Emma's sobs. The sound replayed in his mind like a wound that refused to close. He leaned forward, his elbows resting on his knees, his voice firm now. You are right. I was wrong to hide it. I see that now. And I swear to you, it will never happen again. From this day forward, no one will dare to treat you with disrespect. No one will dare to make our children cry. His wife's lips quivered, and she nodded, wiping her tears. She wanted to believe him, and in her heart, she knew he meant every word. Richard stood, pulling his phone from his pocket. It was sleek and expensive, a device that seemed out of place in the modest house. He dialed a number quickly. His wife watched, curious and anxious, as he spoke in a calm but commanding voice. This is Richard Lawson, he said firmly. I want every detail about the man who owns these properties. Yes, tonight. I don't care what time it is. Find out his debts, his contracts, his weaknesses. By tomorrow morning, I want him unable to threaten anyone again. He ended the call without hesitation. His wife gasped softly. Richard, what are you doing? I am making sure that landlord never steps into this house again, Richard replied coldly. He thought he could scare my family because he saw weakness. He will learn that he made a mistake. I don't raise my voice often, but when I do, I make sure it is the last time someone ever dares to cross me. There was steel in his tone, the kind that came not from arrogance but from a life of leading men, commanding companies, and building empires. His wife saw it clearly now. He was not just her husband. He was a man of power, a man whose name carried weight beyond these walls. Hours passed, and as dawn began to glow faintly through the curtains, the sound of Richard's phone vibrated on the table. He picked it up, listening silently as his assistant on the other end reported everything. His eyes grew sharper with each detail. When the call ended, he put the phone down with a heavy thud. It's done, he said simply. By tomorrow, that landlord will be facing legal trouble for the games he has been playing with tenants. He won't be able to trouble anyone again. His wife stared at him in amazement. The speed, the precision, it was as though he had pressed a button, and the entire world shifted in his favor. For the first time, she realized the true reach of his influence. When the children woke in the morning, the house felt different. It was brighter, warmer, and strangely safer. Emma rubbed her eyes and looked around, still holding her brother's hand. She found her father sitting at the table, drinking coffee calmly, as if nothing had happened. But to her, everything had changed. She walked over to him shyly. Papa, she whispered, is the bad man gone? Richard smiled gently, pulling her into his lap. Yes, my love. He is gone. And he will never come back. I promise you that. Emma leaned against his chest, feeling the calm strength in his voice. For the first time, she believed completely that no one could harm them. Later that day, Richard took his family outside. The luxury car still waited at the curb, shining proudly under the morning sun. Neighbors gathered again, whispering, staring at the sight. Some looked on with envy, others with admiration, but all of them knew the truth now. This family was not what they had thought. Richard opened the car door for his wife and children, guiding them inside gently. Emma's eyes sparkled as she sat in the soft leather seat, her brother bouncing with excitement. It was like a new world to them, a world they had only seen from afar. His wife hesitated before getting in, looking back at the house they had lived in for years. It was small, filled with both happy and painful memories. She felt a pull in her heart, but then she looked at her children's smiling faces and her husband's determined expression. She knew it was time to leave the old life behind. As the car began to move, Richard held his daughter's hand and looked out the window. "From today, we start anew," he said firmly. "No more fear, no more hiding. You will live the life you deserve." The car rolled down the street, past neighbors who stared in awe. Whispers followed them like shadows, but Richard didn't care. His only focus was on the three faces in the car with him, the family he had sworn to protect. That night had shown him the truth: wealth meant nothing if it wasn't used to shield the ones you loved. And from now on, his wealth, his power, his very name would be a shield around them. The old house disappeared behind them as the car drove on, but the memory of Emma's sobs remained in Richard's heart like a scar. He knew he would never let her feel that way again. The sunlight poured through the tall windows of the new house, spilling warmth across the polished floors and soft furniture. The air smelled fresh, scented lightly with flowers in the garden outside. For Emma and her brother, this house was a world of wonder. Everything gleamed. Everything felt safe. And most importantly, everything felt like home, even though it was new. The fear they had known for so long, the nights filled with sobs, the anxiety of not knowing if someone would hurt them, was gone. Gone because their father, Richard, had made sure of it. Emma woke early that morning, her small hands clutching the soft blanket as she looked around the spacious room. Her eyes widened at the sunlight, the big windows, and the beautiful furniture that seemed like something from a storybook. Her brother, still rubbing sleep from his eyes, whispered, "Do you think anyone can hurt us here, Emma?" She shook her head quickly, thinking about the events of the last few days, about how their father had stood up, loud and strong, and protected them. "No," she said softly. "Papa will never let anyone hurt us again." Downstairs, Richard was already awake, preparing breakfast. He moved efficiently, pouring juice, making toast, and checking that everything was perfect. His wife entered the kitchen quietly, watching him with a smile that was both proud and grateful. She knew the man she had married was not just a kind husband but a protector, a pillar of strength. He had shielded their family from danger, not with weapons or threats, but with his presence, his authority, and his unwavering courage. When the children came down, they were greeted by the warm smell of fresh toast and fruit. Richard knelt to their level, ruffling their hair gently. "Good morning, my brave ones," he said. "Sleep well?" Emma nodded, smiling shyly. "Yes, Papa. We slept well because we knew you were here." He felt a swell of pride and love in his heart. His eyes softened as he looked at her. "That's right. I will always be here. You and your brother are safe, always." Breakfast was a lively affair. The children chatted happily, laughing about small things, while their parents listened, enjoying every moment. Richard's wife glanced at him across the table. "Do you realize," she whispered, "that tonight, we all slept without a single fear? That is because of you." Richard shook his head. "It is not just me. It is all of us together. We are a family. And a family looks after each other." After breakfast, Richard took Emma and her brother to explore the new house and garden. They ran through the rooms, discovering secret corners, little nooks perfect for reading or playing. The garden was expansive, filled with flowers, shrubs, and a small fountain that sparkled under the sunlight. Emma stopped near the fountain, dipping her small fingers into the cool water, and her laughter rang out like a melody. Richard's heart felt full. He had lived a life of business deals, numbers, and strategy, but in this moment, he understood that the greatest achievement in life was the happiness of his children. Every late night spent building his empire, every challenge faced, every moment of sacrifice, all of it led to this: seeing them smile, knowing they were safe, and that they felt loved. Later in the day, neighbors came by, curious about the new family. Some whispered behind hands, others approached politely, eager to make introductions. Richard greeted each one with warmth, his presence calm yet commanding respect. No one dared question him, no one dared cause trouble. The family watched quietly, learning that true power often came not from anger or threats, but from integrity and strength combined. In the afternoon, Richard sat with his wife on the veranda, the children playing nearby. He took her hand gently. "Tonight," he said softly, "we will have dinner together. Just us. No interruptions. I want us to remember what we have, and how precious it is." She smiled, tears welling in her eyes. "We almost lost that, Richard. I don't ever want to feel that fear again." He nodded solemnly. "And you won't? Not ever? From now on, every day will be safe, happy, and full of love. That is my promise to you and to them." Evening arrived, and the house glowed under soft lights. The table was set elegantly but simply, the children sitting proudly, feeling important and cherished. They ate together, sharing stories of their day, laughter filling the air like music. Emma looked at her father, her eyes bright. "Papa, can we play outside tomorrow in the garden again?" "Of course," Richard replied with a smile. "We will spend the whole day there if you want." After dinner, the children were tucked into bed. Richard stayed beside them for a while, watching their peaceful faces. Emma hugged his hand tightly. "I love you, Papa," she whispered. "I love you too, my little one," he said, kissing her forehead. "Always remember, you are brave, and you are loved. And nothing in this world can take that away from you." As he left their room, Richard and his wife stood together in the quiet hallway. They looked at each other, understanding fully the journey they had just survived. The danger, the fear, and the revelation had all led to this moment of clarity, a stronger bond, deeper love, and a family that would never be broken. Richard held his wife close. "We will make sure this home is more than a house," he said. "It will be a sanctuary. A place where our children grow up happy, confident, and safe. A place where fear is never allowed, where love is abundant, and where respect is earned, not demanded." His wife leaned against him, finally feeling at peace. "We are lucky," she whispered. "And I am grateful. Grateful for you, for us, and for them." Weeks passed, and life settled into a comforting rhythm. Emma and her brother thrived in their new environment, playing freely, learning with curiosity, and laughing without fear. Richard continued to manage his business, but now, his focus had shifted. It was no longer just about success or money, it was about protecting the ones he loved and teaching them the importance of strength, kindness, and courage. The neighborhood soon accepted the family, not because of wealth, but because of the respect Richard showed to everyone. His reputation as a fair, powerful, and honorable man spread quietly but firmly. No one dared threaten his family, and his children grew up witnessing a father who was strong but gentle, commanding yet loving. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Richard stood on the balcony with his family beside him. Emma and her brother held their mother's hands, their faces glowing in the soft light. Richard looked at them, his heart full. "I made a promise," he said quietly, "and I will keep it forever. This family, our home, our love, they are untouchable. Nothing can harm us as long as we are together. Emma smiled, hugging her mother and brother tightly. She no longer remembered the fear from before. She only knew safety, warmth, and the unshakable presence of her father. That night, as she drifted off to sleep, she felt a peace she had never known, a peace built on love, courage, and the unwavering strength of a father who would move mountains to protect his family. And so life continued, bright and secure, a story of fear overcome, love affirmed, and the enduring power of family. The shadows of the past faded, replaced by laughter, safety, and hope. Richard's promise remained unbroken, a guiding light in the lives of those he loved most. Together, they faced the future not with fear, but with confidence, joy, and an unshakable bond that could never be broken.